Hey everyone, this is Prince from Desi Programmer. Welcome back to another exciting Laravel tutorial. And in this video, we are going to talk about user authentication for an API. So as you can see, this tutorial is almost completed. That's why I'm recording the intro now. So you can create a user. Like for example, I have already created a user with this particular data. If I click on send, it's going to say, hey, the email has already been taken. The user already exists. If I change the email here, let's say prince2@gmail.com. Now you can see that now I have a new user and this user gives me a token too. Now obviously if I don't get the token, I can go back and log in with the prince2@gmail.com and I will get a new token here. As you can see, the previous user's token generation is working fine. But now you can use that token to get your profile. If I paste the token here, click on send, now you can get the user profile from the particular token. So the ID was 2, the email is prince2@gmail.com and other details are pretty much same. You can also log out the user. I have not renamed this, don't get confused. Okay, so I'm saying that hey, I don't want to stay logged in with this token. I'm clicking on send and this is going to log me out. Now if you go back to profile, we're using the same token. If you click on send again, it's going to say that hey, you are logged out, you can't access that token again. So this is all that we are going to do in this simple straightforward Laravel tutorial video. I hope you like it and let's dive right into it. Well, so we are going to talk about authentication and authorization in just a couple of slides to make sure that you understand what you want to do right here. First thing that I want to do is registration. The process is simple. We will get all the necessary data. We will validate the data. We will create a user and then we will simply log in the user, or what some websites do is that they redirect to log in with the current created credentials. Next thing that we want to do is authentication. Basically, simple terms, it's login. We again get the necessary data. We validate the data. We check the data. So basically we check if the password is correct or not, if the email exists or not, and then we either send a token or we create a session depending on your uses. Next thing that I want is authorization or token authentication. So the difference between authentication and authorization is that in authentication you check if the user is valid or not. In authorization you check if the request is valid or not. So here we are going to accept a token from our request. We are going to validate the token if it's a valid token, if it's generated by my server or my application or not. And if it's true, then we will either proceed or we will ask to log in if it's not true. Last but not the least, what we want to do here is simply want to log out a user, which means we want to destroy a token when a user clicks on logout so that later the same can't be used. I have actually seen this many times. What people do is that when they don't have ideas about developing REST API, they just try and send a JSON data back and forth. And it's completely fine until the point when you come to user authentication where the process really changes. So here we are going to understand all about token authentication. So I'm going to create a simple project in my Laravel tutorials directory. I'm going to name this authentications. Alright, so we have our project up and running. Let's switch to the project and let's open it up in a code editor. Now, we already understand the basics. We already know what we have to do here. So for example, I can simply go to routes in api.php and this is where my API routes are going to be. I don't want a middleware here. I'm simply saying make this a get request. Okay. Now I have simply said that okay, this is a home route, a get request, and I simply say welcome if somebody makes a request right here. I can go back to my terminal and we can simply do something like php artisan serve. Now our server is up and running. I can go back to postman and if I click on send, now you're going to get welcome here, which means our server is up and running. We have created our project and we have an API route here. Now let's get into detail. So to create a user or to do anything, we need a user table in our database. And to do that, we create models. Now here, first thing first, model actually exists in Laravel for a user. So if you go to your database and okay, first let's go to models. There you can see you have a user.php. And what it simply says here is that you can fill name, email and password for any particular user. Okay, password and remember token and hidden field and email verified at is basically a date time. If we want to change this, so if you don't want this particular format, if you want to add something to a user field, if you want to remove something, what we have to do is that we have to go database, migrations, and then we have to create a users table.php. Now I hope you remember everything that we talked about working with models. So as you can see, we are going to create, what this is going to do is that this is going to automatically create a table named users It's going to have ID, a string which will be name, email which is going to be unique, email verified at which is going to be a date time. Then you will have a password, you will have option to remember token, and then you will have timestamps. Now if you want to add anything extra, you can do it right here. For example, I want to store let's say phone number too. So I'm just going to paste this down. I'm saying that this is going to be phone and this is going to be character, and the phone's length I'm just fixing it to, let's say 10. You can only enter 10 digits here. Okay, let's save it. And also I'm saying that this is nullable. Let's say it's not nullable. Let's say that we really want to force the user to enter a phone number too. So this is how you can actually change and you can add whatever you want to your user table. Now once you have done that, already everything is up and running. If you are creating a project while watching this tutorial, so you will already have everything up and running. So let's go back to our terminal. Let's close this and I'm going to say PHP artisan make controller, and I will name this controller as, let's say, Auth Controller. Hit enter and now my controller is created successfully. Let's actually start the server. Let's go back here and in app HTTP controller, now we have an Auth Controller. I have not implemented any methods here by default because we are going to add our own custom methods. So let's just start working with registration. We are going to have a public function. Now I think the process of registration is pretty simple, at least until the point where you just want to get the data, validate the data and just add the user. We have already discussed that in detail in our working with model tutorials. So let's simply say use app /models/user, and then here first what we want to do is that we want to validate the data that you are getting. Now we have a couple of fields and we want to accept data according to that. Now first let's go to models and user.php, and remember we added phone too, and I want user to send phone. I want the user to send the data as phone that we can save. So I have to add this here, which means phone is now fillable, phone can be filled. Let's go back to controller, our auth controller basically, and now I have to validate some fields. Okay, so I'm going to have fields which are going to come from $request, and here I have to validate, and let's see what it is that we have to validate here. So first thing first, we are going to validate the name, and it's simple. I'm saying that the name has to be required. Alright, next we have email, and again it's simple. I'm simply saying that it's required, but here what I want to say here is that it has to be unique. So if you are entering an email, if somebody is sending an email during registration, we are going to check by default whether it's unique or not, means whether any other user exists with the same email or not. So we can do something like unique for users, and the field that we are looking for is email. So it has to be unique for the users table where the field is email. Next thing that I want to check is phone number. So again it's simple. I'm just saying that it has to be required here. And last we are checking for password. Now password is again same. First of all it's required. Okay, and one more field that you can add here is that confirmed. So when you add confirmed, what happens is that it will send you password and password confirmation, two fields, so you can validate accordingly. Save this and this is going to validate it. Now moving forward, what we want to do is that we want to create a user if the data is validated. If not, it's automatically going to send a response with 400 and whatever the errors are. Let's do something that let's actually just return something from here, and let's try and run this function. Okay, so I'm simply going to say return or register. Okay, let's save this. Let's go back to our api.php, and now I need to map this. Okay, so we have to first go and call here. So I'm going to say use app /controllers/auth controller. Okay, and now here I'm simply saying that if you have a route which is going to be, let's say slash, so you can just extend it as much as you want, /account/signup/user/signup. I'm simply going to put it up as sign up. Okay, then what I'm going to do is that I'm going to call my auth controller class, and from here I'm going to call a method which is going to be register. I hope everything is correct. So save this. Let's go back here. Everything is up and running. Let's go back here, click on send. API up is okay. It's going to say that okay /signup is not defined. Sorry, it has to be :post. Okay, we want to make a post route. Save. Let's click on send. It says welcome. Now I'm saying sign up. Okay, send. Again we are going to get an error because this has to be post. Save now and send. Then now it says that okay, target class Auth Controller does not exist, and that's an obvious mistake. So we have http/controller. Let's go back here, click on send again, and now we are saying okay, we are getting this weird error. The reason why we get this error is because remember I said that we have to actually send an accept here in header, which has to say application/JSON. Click on send now, and now it says hey, we have a lot of errors here. First of all, let's pay attention. I said 400, but it has to be a 422, which means unprocessable content. Now it is saying that hey, your request has to be well informed. There is some data that you did not tell us, and the errors are that you did not tell us name, you did not tell us email, and you did not tell us anything about phone number. Let's go and do that. Let's tell them about it. So in our body we are going to have some raw data, which is going to be JSON, and in JSON let's start sending value one by one. I'm saying that my name is going to be friends. Okay, let's click on send. Now as you can see, the name error has disappeared because obviously we are sending a name now. So let's send an email. My email is going to be, just for testing purpose, prince@gmail.com, and my phone is going to be, let's say, 9090. All right, let's send again. Now you see it says that okay, we have an error from SQL part. That's completely fine. We don't have to do much. We just have to go to our .env file. We have to say that the database that we want to talk here is test. Save, go to terminal, close this. We have actually not run any migration, so there are no tables there which from which it can check if the email exists or not. So our bad. Simply we have to run php artisan migrate, hit enter, and it says nothing to migrate. It's actually because I already have all these fields in my database. So let me run this again, and if it doesn't work, okay, it's working. So I just went there and I deleted it. So now in my test, the query was run, everything was deleted, and now again I have all this data. So as you can see, you have a users table with ID, name, email verified at, password, phone, remember token, created at, and updated at. So now that this is all up and running, we can again go back. We can start our server from php artisan serve, and here in our postman, if I click on send again, that's not an issue. We just have to send password again now. So let's send password, and remember this. Now as soon as I send password, it's going to be password only. Okay, let's send it. Now it's going to say that hey, the confirmation does not match. So you have to remember this field. It's going to be password confirmation, password underscore confirmation, and you have to send the same password. For example, when I send this, click on send, now it says register. So if this field you have to remember, and if you're sending any wrong password, then obviously you're going to get an error that the password confirmation doesn't match. So now we have handled one part, which is as simple as a simple authentication, validation of our data. All right, now that we have validated the data, the next thing that we want to do is that we have to create a user. We have to make sure that a user now exists in our table. And how do we do that? Well, that's pretty simple. All that you have to do is that we are getting a user, and the user is going to come from user create. So we have to create a user, and I'm going to pass the field individually. The reason why I'm doing so is because I have to encrypt the password now. Okay, so we are going to have name, which is going to obviously come from $fields and then name. Okay, the same way we are going to have 3 more values. So just copy pasting it and fixing this error. Now we have email, we have password, and we have name. But when it comes to we actually need phone here. And when it comes to password, the process is just little different. First we are going to say password here, but instead of directly adding the value, we are going to add the encrypted value, and for that we are going to use hashes, and that too is provided by default. Something that you will really like about Laravel is that unlike other frameworks like Express.js or let's say Django, where you have to install everything, and I'm not saying that is a problem, but some people feel like that to be a problem, while Laravel is a battery included framework, which means you get all these things by default. So I have to simply say use and pay attention to the path. So we have to say illuminate, then /support, then /fas fascades, so FASCADES, then /hash. Okay, and if this spelling is not right, okay, that is right, so just save it. Now here I have to simply first I have to replace this with password, obviously, and now I have to simply call bcrypt. It will do the job for us. So wrap this up with a method which is bcrypt. Again, remember the spelling. So this is bcrypt. Now this user is going to have a user. Okay, you can again do cross check here that if the user is null, which means there was some error running the query. So that's for up to you to do. So we are going to set to do check if user is null. Okay, so this is completely for you to do. Now I'm simply going to move forward. I'm simply going to create a token now, because in this kind of application, like the application that I'm creating, I'm not redirecting the user to login. I'm simply going to create a token and send back, which means as soon as you register, you are also going to be logged in. So we have to say $token, and token is going to come from $user. Okay, and this itself will have a method which is called create token. Okay, and this create token is going to take some token hash. It should be some really weird random values so that it can't be easily guessed. Since it's a tutorial, I'm going to simply say some hash. All right, and then I'm saying that send this as a plain text token. So we have plain, then we have text, and then we have token. So this is what our token is going to be. Now what I want to do is that since a user has logged in, you may want to store the data on your client side. So I'm going to send the data. So we are going to send some response, and the response will have two set of data. Okay, the first set of data is going to be the user, so the entire user person that we just created. So user is going to come from the $user, obviously. The next thing that I'm sending is the token that we just created. So token is going to come from token, right? And this is something really interesting that I will show you here. So first let me do token. Okay, and after this I'm sending a response, and if you want to send a status codes, you can use the response method. So the response method, first what your response is going to be, which is going to be $response, and then what's going to be status code, which is going to be 200, which means everything was pretty nice. We are done here. So let's go back to our Postman. Here we have my database up and running. As you can see, if I refresh, there is no user right now. Let's go back to Postman. Now you can see if I click on send, we get an error because password doesn't match. So my password is password, my email is prince@gmail.com. I have saved this, and now when I click on sign up, let's hope there are no errors, and yep, you get this data. So take a look at this really weird looking data if it seems weird to you. First really interesting thing is that what most people do is that they send the data this way, and that's completely fine, not an issue. But if you want to send this entire data in one map, like instead of using this user key here, you want to send this data right here itself along with the token, you have to figure that out. But that's going to be a really interesting thing that you can do to teach yourself something. Right now our job is done. We have a user here, the name is there, the email is there, the phone number is there, everything that we added up, we have the ID, and we have a token. Now this is a randomly generated token, and every time you are sending a request to your server with this token, the server will know that it's coming from a valid resource, which means it's coming from your own application or your own website or your own whatever product you launched. And with this token, they can easily find out which user you want to do the stuff for. Okay, like it's user A, user B, user C, or whoever it is. Now let's actually go back to our table. Okay, let's refresh, and now you can see we have this one user. Okay, obviously the password is hashed, you can't guess the password. And then other than that, there are going to be other fields too. So for example, if you see in personal access tokens, you have an access token too. So we have a name. Okay, this is for a user, this is the token, and abilities means it can basically do everything. That's completely fine. And this is what I want to say is that this is something Laravel does for us by default. You won't have to do anything, and you won't have to install any package, you won't have to do much. And if you're someone who has already coded in Django, if you're someone who has coded in Node.js and Express, you know how much code you have to write to create a token and to send a token. I'm not saying it's a bad thing, it's just that Laravel does this thing simple. So if you just want to put up a simple application, you want to handle such things, this is going to make the job easy for you. So now we have this part up and running where user can register. Our second part that we want to handle is that, hey, a user can even log in here. Now that process is again going to be very simple. Okay, what I'm simply going to do here is that I'm just going to copy this entire function here, and wait, I'm not skipping anything. The reason why we are copying this entire function here is that first I just have to change from this register to login. So now we have a login function here. Now what you want to use to log in, that's completely up to you. If you want to use the email, just accept the email. If you want to use the phone, just accept the phone. You will understand this by the time we move forward. Okay, so I don't need these two data now, and I don't want this email to be unique. Okay, I'm just saying that hey, this email is required, you have to send the data. So now we have two fields in our login, which is required email and a password. Great. Obviously we don't have to create a user, but what we want to do is that we want to check a user. So instead of using user.create, I'm saying user.where. And this is where the interesting part is, and something that people always ask is that hey, you have talked about signing up using email and password, okay, but what if I want to sign up using phone and password, or what if I want to sign up using username and password? So you just have to replace this thing. So first of all, instead of email, I'm saying you have to send you have to send email and password. It was earlier name and email. Now I'm saying where. So for a user, find a user where the email is equal to some value, and that value is we are going to get from these fields. So the email is equal to $fields email, and I want to get only one user, so I'm going to say first. That makes completely sense, right? Because we are already making sure that no duplicate user exists. So get the first user. Now again, the same part is that you have to check if the user is not null. Okay, so let's do that here. Okay, I'm saying if not is null, null. Coding in multiple languages have its own cons. You just always mess up the keywords. So if is null, so $user. So if the user is null, what we have to do is that we have to simply return a response, and I'm simply going to copy this response and understand functions 101. If I'm using this return keyword here, which means I don't have to use an else block. All right, if this is true, which means it's going to end the function call right here. This is again something people get confused with. They're like, hey, you are not using an else part, so basically after this it's going to run this. No, it's not. So here in our response, I'm not sending any user. All right, I'm not sending any token, I'm just sending any message, and this is going to be an unexpected error, or let's say user not found. Okay, this is going to be 400, which means hey, it was a bad request because you're trying to log in a user which doesn't even exist. And if it's not null, then we are simply going to create a token. The process is same, and we are simply going to send the user and the token. And this is what I was saying, that I'm not going to write the code from zero because most of it is already present here. So let's save this. Let's go back to our api.php. Let's copy and paste this. This is simply going to be login. The method that we are going to call here is going to be login, and here we have no error. Let's go to Postman. Let's save this, and okay, let's actually copy this. Let's duplicate this, and here I am saying that login. Okay, I don't need to pass the name here. I have to pass the email and the password. But what I'm going to do here is that just for fun, I'm going to pass the wrong password first. Okay, and this is going to have issues because although I did check if the user exists or not, I have not yet checked if the password is correct or not. So we have to first check the password too. Let's say check password. Okay, so now that we know that the user is available, I'm going to check the password, and this is again something that I want to show. What some website do is that they simply tell you that the credential is bad. So they're not telling you if the email was wrong or if the password was wrong. They're simply telling you that something was wrong. And what some other websites do is that they do tell you that okay, your email was incorrect, or that your user was not found, or that hey, your password was incorrect. So I'm going to take that long approach where I'm telling whether the user part was not correct or whether the password was not correct. If you don't want that, if you want to do both at once, you can, instead of checking this null and returning a response, you can check both, write it here using an AND operator, and then you can, using an OR operator, and then you can just return a single response that there was an error. I'm going to change the password. I'm going to check the password here. I'm saying here if the hash value, I have to check something from the hash. So if hash colon check. So check the hash, and we have to check the hash for a couple of fields. So first field is the password that the user entered. So that's going to come from $fields and password. The second value, so basically what check does is that it simply compares if they both are equal or not. So the second value is going to be the user's password. Okay, so user and password. Now if this check is true, which means there is a user, right? But what I want to do is that I want to just return some error and end the if statement here. So what I can do is that I can simply add a exclamation mark here, and what this means is that if the check was true, just revert the result. So what this block will run when the password is not correct. Just copy this, paste it, save it, and say wrong password. Save. Let's go back. Okay, now let's go back here again. Let's click on send, and it says that yep, hash not found. Good. And it's because we have made a simple error. So basically, remember when I was using this bcrypt and I was asking you to import this library, well, this actually you can use the bcrypt without having to import this, and that's why this was giving an error. We don't need an S here, it's going to be FACADES. Now if we save this, we go back to post, when we click on send, and you get this message that says wrong password, because obviously we are sending a wrong password here. And what if I send a wrong email? Save, send, it says message user not found. So as you can see how amazing the process is. Hey, you are sending a wrong user and that you are sending a wrong password. Great. Now since if I want to log in, I'm going to send the correct user and correct password. It is going to send me the same data, so what my user is and what my token is. Pay attention to the token. We have the token and we have the ID of the token, and this part makes the travels up pretty easy. And if you're someone who have already coded GWT authentication in Node.js and know stuff like that, you will know what I'm talking about, because the traversal part, backlisting token stuff is pretty hard there, and that's why I use refresh token, which makes the entire authentication flow more complex, especially for beginners. Alright, now the next thing that I want to do is that I want to show you how authorization works. So we are going to have a simple function, let's say profile, and the profile is going to send data only if you're sending a valid token, which means if a user actually is logged in. So what we're going to do here is that, again, let's do the same stuff. Let's actually create a function, and this is where you will be amazed how amazing it's going to be. I have to do a simple public function, and let's name this function as profile. Okay, pretty standard stuff. It's going to take request, which is going to be $request. Okay, and this is going to return some response. Now since this is profile, what we want to do is that I'm simply saying return the user from this particular request, and you can just grab that like this. So every time if there is a logged in user, if you do a $request and then point to user, it's going to give you the current user's data. But I'm saying that this can be accessed only if you are logged in, and for that we don't have to do anything here. Okay, here we are all good. All the changes that I want to make is now in my API function. Okay, so let's go back in here, and now obviously we are going to have another API, and what that API is going to do is that it's going to call the profile part. So we have /profile, and it's going to call the profile part. Now understand the entire authentication flow here. When we talk about authorization, what I want is that this function, whatever this function is doing right now, it's simply going to return your profile, but this could be doing something which could be actually making changes that only an authorized user can make. So instead of calling this function at all, I'm going to stop the execution right here if there is any error, or if the token is not present, or if an invalid token has been passed. What we use for that is we use a middleware. So I'm saying that I'm going to group couple of routes in a middleware, because you can have multiple routes obviously which can be accessed only by authenticated users. So I'm saying we have to group couple of routes. So we have route colon group, and this group is going to use a middleware. Okay, and that middleware is Sanctum Auth. So just pay attention to this. You have to write it as it is. It's going to be auth colon sanctum. Okay, and sorry, this has to be in brackets. So this is what we are going to use, a single middleware here. Okay, and rest of the stuff is pretty simple. It's also going to have a function, and now here we can put this route. Now what this means is that this route is going to be protected. Let's save this. Okay, now let's go back to Postman. Let's actually duplicate this. Okay, let's click hit, and it's saying message unauthenticated, and you can see it says a response type status of 401, which means hey, it's unauthorized. Okay, but so it's saying forbidden, but especially because you are not authenticated. So now the question arises, how do you send authentication data? Very simple. You have to go to auth. Actually this is going to be sent as a header only, but Postman allows us to send, allows us to put it here. So we are going to use a bearer token. Remember, this uses a bearer token, and this is how what a token is. I think, no, this is what my token is. That is coming from some previous data. Copy, let's go here, paste it, save it. Okay, now if I click on send, it's going to send me the data. So remember, only when you have a valid token, it's going to send you the data. If I just remove this A from here, click on send again, no, now you're not having a valid token. And now when you have A, which means now your token is valid. And this is what I was talking about. Whatever your routes are which need hand user authentication, just put them right here, and it's going to deal with that. One such route that I'm going to put right now here is going to be the logout route. So what I want to do is that I want to log out a user, which means, see, logout is simple. You have to understand that when you click on logout on client side, the client has to make a request to the server to destroy the token. Now, doesn't matter what the server is going to respond to you, you have to log the user out. Basically, it also depends on the kind of application, but 99% of the time you can simply just remove the user's local data and you can log the user out. Because even though the server is not deleting the token, right, it's going to be deleted automatically after some time. So we can just log out the user if the user is clicked on the server, although we have to do some process. So I'm saying that only an authenticated user can make a request to the /logout route, which means they need to have a token. Now what happens on the logout route? So let's go to Auth Controller, and just as we have this profile, we are going to have a logout too. So log out, and here instead of doing this, all that we have to simply do is that we are calling the auth function here. Then I'm saying that, hey, find the current user, find its tokens and just destroy them. So it's going to be delete, not destroy right now. Basically we are destroying, but the method we need to call is delete, and then you can send the response. So I can just copy this, paste, and we just have a message that simply says deleted successfully. So let's do this DELE, or simply logged out. So we have logged and out. Let's save it, send the response was 200. Now let's go back to Postman. Now remember, this is the token that we're using right now. It is a valid token. You send it and you can access the data. But I'm going to duplicate this, and I am saying that, hey, we are now calling a logout route, with this particular token. I click on send, it says 2, which I think means is going from this. It's saying how many tokens were deleted. I don't need a return statement here, by the way. Just save this anyway. It has worked in simple terms. If I go back to profile and click on send again, now this token is not going to work, because hey, that token is no longer, we have just deleted, we have just logged out. So now you can actually click on login again. So let's go here. I'm saying, hey, log me in again. Now you have a new token, and now you can simply use this token to check your profile. Let's paste it here, send. Yep, you have your data, and you can also log out the user here with this token. Click on send again. It says, hey, logged out. Use the token again. Nope, it's not going to work. So I think that's what pretty much we have done right now. We have understood how to use Sanctum authentication. Basically, this Sanctum auth is the kind of library that handles everything. Earlier, it was not present by default, I think. Now it's present by default. That's why we don't have to do a lot of configuration. So we have understood how you can create a user, how you can add extra field to the user model, how you can log in a user, how you can, protect couple of routes, and how you can access the user in that route if you have to make some changes to the data. We're obviously going to talk about detail about user data manipulation when a user is logged in and stuff like that when we talk about the e-commerce API and the Linktree API. But I think that's pretty much it from my side in this video right now. We have talked about user authentication using Sanctum auth in Laravel, and I'll catch up soon in the next video.